What happens when a 26-year-old billionaire's son walks into Providence Municipal Court with 7 attorneys from one of the most expensive law firms in New England and thinks money can buy him out of vehicular assault? This young man is about to learn that Judge Frank Caprio doesn't take phone calls from billionaires. He makes them. And the one call he's about to make will expose a corruption scandal so deep that by the end of this hearing, an entire law firm will be filing for bankruptcy protection, and a father will choose his conscience over his only son. Let us know where you're watching from, because what happens next will show you exactly what happens when unlimited wealth collides with a 76-year-old judge who spent his entire career watching entitled people learn painful lessons about accountability. March 17, 2023. 9:30 a.m. Providence Municipal Court sits heavy under gray morning clouds, the kind of New England weather that makes everything feel more serious, more consequential. Inside Courtroom 4, Judge Frank Caprio adjusts his glasses and reviews the docket for what should have been a straightforward vehicular assault case, case number 2023 CV 4782. The State of Rhode Island versus Christopher Aldridge Wellington III. The defendant enters at 9:42 a.m., and everything about him screams wealth without wisdom. 26 years old, 6'2", wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit that costs more than most people's monthly rent. His hair's professionally styled with that deliberately messy look that takes a stylist 45 minutes to achieve. He checks his Patek Philippe watch, a $180,000 Nautilus, 3 times while walking to the defense table. He doesn't look nervous, he looks inconvenienced, but it's not Christopher Wellington who makes the courtroom pause. It's the 7 attorneys who follow him in single file. 7. Each wearing suits that signal they bill $800 an hour or more. They're from Whitmore, Hastings Reed, a firm so prestigious they have offices in 12 countries and routinely represent Fortune 100 companies. Their lead attorney, Marcus Whitmore himself, hasn't personally appeared in municipal court in 17 years. His presence here is a statement. It says, "We will bury you in paperwork. We will exhaust your resources. We will make this so expensive and complicated that you'll beg us to settle." Christopher Wellington sits, crosses his legs, and smirks at his phone. His attorneys arrange themselves like a human shield. 3 on each side, 1 directly behind him, all opening identical leather portfolios simultaneously. Judge Caprio watches this performance with those kind eyes that have seen 35 years of people trying to intimidate his courtroom. He removes his glasses. That signature gesture everyone who's watched his career knows means he's about to cut through nonsense, and sets them carefully on the bench. "Good morning, Mr. Wellington," Judge Caprio says, his voice carrying that calm, Rhode Island authority that doesn't need volume to command a room. Christopher doesn't respond. He's typing on his phone. Marcus Whitmore, 63 years old with silver hair and a burgundy tie that costs $400, stands smoothly. "Your Honor, Marcus Whitmore, appearing on behalf of Mr. Wellington. We have 6 associate attorneys with us today to—" "I can see that, Mr. Whitmore," Judge Caprio interrupts gently. "Does your client know he's in a courtroom?" Christopher finally looks up. "I'm here, aren't I?" The charges are severe, and Judge Caprio reads them with the weight they deserve. On February 3, 2023, at approximately 11:47 p.m., Christopher Aldridge Wellington III was operating a 2022 McLaren 720S on Hope Street in Providence. The posted speed limit was 30 miles per hour. Security cameras from 3 separate businesses captured Wellington's vehicle traveling at an estimated 92 miles per hour, more than 3 times the legal limit, through a residential area 7 blocks from Brown University. At the intersection of Hope Street and Angel Street, Wellington ran a red light that had been red for 4 full seconds. Traffic camera footage shows this clearly. There was no attempt to slow down, no brake lights illuminated, just 92 miles of entitled momentum in a $300,000 supercar painted a custom shade called Privilege Blue. The victim was Harold Chen, 71 years old, a retired mathematics professor who had taught at Brown for 42 years. That night, Professor Chen was walking his 13-year-old golden retriever, Bailey, across the intersection. They were in the marked crosswalk. The walk signal was illuminated. They were doing everything right. Body camera footage from the responding officers shows what happens when 92 miles per hour meets flesh and bone. Professor Chen was thrown 47 feet. The medical report, which Judge Caprio has read twice, documents 3 broken ribs, a shattered pelvis, a fractured skull, a collapsed lung, and trauma to his spine that means he'll never walk without assistance again. Bailey died on impact. The body camera audio captures Christopher Wellington's first words at the scene. Not, "Is he okay?" Not, "I'm so sorry." Officer Rodriguez's camera records Wellington standing beside his McLaren, $47,000 in front-end damage, and saying, "Do you know who my father is? Do you have any idea what this is going to cost the city when I sue for harassment?" Professor Chen was still lying in the street. The ambulance hadn't arrived yet. Bailey's body was still warm. Officer Martinez asked Wellington if he'd been drinking. The body camera footage shows Wellington's response. "I'm following the advice of my attorney. I don't have to answer your questions. My father is Richard Wellington. Look him up." Richard Wellington. That name carries weight. Billionaire real estate developer who owns 17 residential towers in Providence alone. He sits on the boards of 3 major banks. He's donated $40 million to Brown University. His company, Wellington Properties International, controls enough political influence in Rhode Island to make judges nervous about their re-election campaigns. But Christopher Wellington made one critical mistake that night. He refused the breathalyzer test. In Rhode Island, that refusal comes with an automatic license suspension and creates a legal presumption of intoxication. The blood draw 3 hours later, taken after Christopher spent 2 hours with his attorneys before finally being processed, showed a BAC of 0.09, just above the legal limit of 0.008, but blood alcohol content drops at approximately 0.015 per hour. 3 hours earlier, at the time of impact, medical experts estimate Wellington's BAC was somewhere between 0.13 and 0.16. He was drunk, he was speeding, he killed a man's dog and destroyed a man's life. And when the police tried to hold him accountable, he dropped his father's name like it was a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you're not subscribed, hit that button right now, because what happens next will show you exactly what happens when a billionaire's legal army meets a judge who's been waiting his entire career for this moment. Marcus Whitmore stands and begins his opening statement with the kind of confidence that comes from never losing. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges he was involved in an unfortunate accident, but the state's characterization of events is dramatically overblown. Mr. Wellington was driving within reasonable parameters when Professor Chen, and we extend our deepest sympathies, stepped into the roadway at an unexpected moment. The traffic camera footage, when examined by our accident reconstruction experts, shows significant ambiguity about the signal status. Furthermore, the blood alcohol content taken 3 hours after the incident is inadmissible under Mr. Whitmore." Judge Caprio's voice is still calm, but there's steel underneath. "Your client was driving 92 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. Are you arguing that's within reasonable parameters?" "Your Honor, the speed measurement equipment has not been properly calibrated according to state regulations. We have documentation showing. The measurement equipment was 3 separate security cameras from 3 different businesses," Judge Caprio says. "Are you suggesting they all malfunctioned simultaneously to frame your client?" Whitmore doesn't miss a beat. "We're suggesting that estimated speeds from commercial security footage lack the precision required for criminal prosecution. We have 5 expert witnesses prepared to testify that..." "Mr. Whitmore, this is a municipal court hearing for vehicular assault and DUI charges. This isn't a murder trial. You don't need 5 expert witnesses. You need your client to answer some very simple questions honestly." Judge Caprio looks directly at Christopher Wellington. "Mr. Wellington, do you understand the severity of these charges?" Christopher leans back in his chair. "I understand that this whole thing is being blown way out of proportion. People get in car accidents every day. It's unfortunate, but..." "Professor Chen spent 11 days in intensive care," Judge Caprio interrupts. "He will never walk without a walker or wheelchair again. His dog died. That's not an accident. That's the consequence of your choices." Allegedly my choices, Christopher corrects. And with all due respect, Your Honor, everyone speeds sometimes. It's not a big deal. This is Providence, not some small town where Marcus Whitmore puts a hand on Christopher's shoulder, trying to silence him. But the damage is done. Judge Caprio's kind eyes have turned to ice. Mr. Wellington, I want to hear from you directly, not your 7 attorneys. Do you feel any remorse for what you did to Professor Chen? Christopher shrugs. I mean, sure, I feel bad that he got hurt, but I was traumatized too. Do you know what it's like to see someone hit by your car? I've been in therapy for weeks. This has been incredibly hard on me. The courtroom goes silent. Even Christopher's attorneys shift uncomfortably. Hard on you, Judge Caprio repeats slowly. Professor Chen is 71 years old. He taught mathematics at Brown for 42 years. He volunteered at the Providence Public Library every Saturday morning teaching immigrant children math for free. He walked his dog every night at the same time, the same route, for 13 years. And you took that life from him because you were drunk and driving like you owned the road. Allegedly drunk, Whitmore interjects. And Your Honor, we object to this characterization. Your client just told me he thinks this is not a big deal. Judge Caprio turns his attention to the prosecution table. I'd like to hear from Professor Chen. The courtroom doors open, and Harold Chen enters in a wheelchair pushed by his daughter, Melissa. He's wearing a simple button-down shirt and khakis. His face is drawn, aged 10 years in the 6 weeks since the accident. But there's dignity in how he holds himself, even trapped in a wheelchair he'll need for the rest of his life. Melissa wheels her father to the witness area. Professor Chen's voice shakes when he begins speaking, but he doesn't look away from Christopher Wellington. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I'm not that kind of person. But I need to tell you what my life is like now. I can't walk to my front door without assistance. I can't stand long enough to cook a meal. I can't sleep through the night because the pain wakes me up. My daughter had to quit her job to take care of me. And Bailey, his voice breaks. Bailey was my companion for 13 years. After my wife died, Bailey was the reason I got out of bed every morning. He's gone, and Mr. Wellington hasn't apologized once. Not once. He hired 7 lawyers instead of writing 1 letter saying he's sorry. Christopher Wellington checks his phone again. Judge Caprio watches Christopher scroll through his phone during Professor Chen's testimony, and something shifts in the courtroom atmosphere. The judge removes his glasses again and speaks with a quietness that somehow fills every corner of the room. Mr. Wellington, put your phone away. Christopher doesn't look up. I'm texting my father. He needs to know how ridiculous this is. Your father, Judge Caprio says. Richard Wellington. You've mentioned him several times. At the scene of the accident, you told the officers to look him up. You seem to believe his name will protect you. Marcus Whitmore stands quickly. Your Honor, my client's family connections are irrelevant to... Sit down, Mr. Whitmore. Judge Caprio's voice doesn't rise, but Whitmore sits. Mr. Wellington, I think it's time we called your father. Since you seem to think his involvement will change the outcome here, let's make it official. Christopher looks confused for the first time. What? You heard me. Call your father. Right now. Put it on speaker. Let's see if Richard Wellington wants to use his influence to protect a son who thinks killing someone's dog and destroying someone's life is not a big deal. The courtroom erupts in murmurs. Marcus Whitmore is on his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We object in the strongest possible. Your objection is noted. Mr. Wellington, make the call. Christopher's confidence wavers. I don't think that's... Make the call or I'll hold you in contempt. Christopher swallows hard and pulls out his phone. His hands shake slightly as he dials. The phone rings on speaker, the sound amplified in the silent courtroom. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Christopher. Richard Wellington's voice comes through clear and firm. 72 years old, still running a billion-dollar empire, still commanding rooms with just his name. Are you in court? Dad? Yeah, I need you to... Put me on speaker for the judge. Christopher looks panicked. Dad, just listen. Put me on speaker, now. Judge Caprio leans forward. Mr. Wellington, this is Judge Frank Caprio. Your son is facing vehicular assault and DUI charges. He seems to believe your name will make these charges disappear. There's a long pause. The courtroom holds its breath. Judge Caprio, Richard Wellington finally says, his voice heavy. "I need you to know something. I've already spoken with the victims, Professor Chen and his family. I've offered to cover all medical expenses, rehabilitation costs, and financial support for as long as he needs it, not as a settlement, as the bare minimum decency my son should have offered from day one." Christopher's face goes white. "Dad, what are you—" "Be quiet, Christopher." Richard's voice cuts like glass. "Judge Caprio, whatever sentence you determine is appropriate, I fully support it. I will not use my position or influence to protect my son from accountability. He did this. He hurt someone. He showed no remorse. And that behavior does not represent the values I've tried to instill in him. Apparently, I failed." Marcus Whitmore is frantically whispering to his associate attorneys. The legal army is suddenly in disarray, their entire strategy crumbling. "Furthermore," Richard Wellington continues, "I've instructed Whitmore, Hastings, and Reed to cease all representation of my son in this matter, effective immediately. I will not fund a legal defense that attempts to minimize what Christopher did. If he wants attorneys, he can hire them himself with his own money." "Mr. Wellington," Marcus Whitmore starts to speak, but Richard cuts him off. "Marcus, you've been a friend for 20 years, but this ends now. I've already contacted your firm's managing partners. The retainer is terminated. My company will also be reviewing all contracts with your firm. When I learned you were preparing to attack Professor Chen's character, to suggest he was somehow at fault for being in a crosswalk with a green light, that's when I knew I couldn't let this continue." The 7 attorneys sit frozen. The blood drains from Marcus Whitmore's face as he realizes what's happening. Wellington Properties. International represents approximately $47 million in annual legal fees for Whitmore, Hastings, and Reed. Richard Wellington sits on the boards of 3 other companies that together represent another $30 million in business for the firm. The contracts Richard just mentioned? They're the foundation of the firm's entire Rhode Island presence. Christopher Wellington stares at his phone like it's transformed into a snake. "Dad, you can't do this. You can't just—" "I already did." Richard's voice softens slightly, but the resolve doesn't waver. "Son, I love you, but I cannot maintain any integrity in my business or my life while protecting you from consequences you brought on yourself. Judge Caprio, my son drove drunk. He nearly killed a good man. He killed that man's dog. He showed no remorse. He deserves whatever punishment you deem appropriate. I will not interfere. I will not appeal. I will not use my influence. You have my word." The line goes dead. Christopher Wellington collapses forward, his head in his hands. For the first time since entering the courtroom, he looks like what he is, a 26-year-old who just realized money can't fix everything. Marcus Whitmore stands slowly, his $100 suit suddenly looking less impressive. "Your Honor, in light of recent developments, I need to request a continuance to—" "Request denied," Judge Caprio says. "You have 7 attorneys in this courtroom. If you're all leaving, that's your choice, but this hearing continues right now." Whitmore looks at his 6 associates. They all avoid eye contact. "Your Honor, we need to withdraw from representation." "Then withdraw. Mr. Wellington, you can represent yourself, or we can appoint a public defender." Christopher's voice is barely a whisper. "I don't need a public defender." "Then stand up and answer for what you did." Christopher Wellington stands. He's not checking his phone anymore. His hands hang at his sides like dead weight. Judge Caprio looks at him with those eyes that have seen 3 decades of broken people trying to find their way back to decency. "Mr. Wellington, vehicular assault while driving under the influence, reckless driving at 3 times the posted speed limit in a residential area, failure to render aid, leaving the scene of an accident. These are the charges. Do you understand them?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And do you understand that Professor Chen will live with the consequences of your choices for the rest of his life?" Christopher's voice cracks. "Yes." "Look at him." Christopher turns to face Professor Chen, who sits quietly in his wheelchair, his daughter's hand on his shoulder. "Apologize to him, not because I'm telling you to, but because you should have done it 7 weeks ago." Christopher takes a shaking breath. "Professor Chen, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was drunk and stupid and arrogant, and I destroyed your life. I killed your dog. I took everything from you because I thought the rules didn't apply to me. I'm sorry." Professor Chen nods slowly, but says nothing. Judge Caprio delivers the sentence with methodical precision. You are hereby fined $15,000 for vehicular assault, an additional $7,500 for DUI, an additional $5,000 for reckless driving, an additional $2,500 for failure to render aid. Total fines, $30,000. Your license is suspended for 5 years. During that time, you will complete 800 hours of community service with the Providence Public Library, where Professor Chen volunteered. You will teach children mathematics every Saturday for 2 years. You will attend victim impact panels for DUI offenders every month for the next 3 years. You will speak about what you did and who you hurt. You will write a letter of apology to Professor Chen every month for the next year. Handwritten, thoughtful, not delegated to an assistant. You will pay $150,000 in restitution to Professor Chen for medical expenses not covered by your father's offer of assistance. This comes from your money, not your father's. And you will spend 60 days in jail, consecutive, not suspended, not commuted. You will serve every single day. The courtroom gasps. 60 days is severe for a first offense, even with the aggravating factors. But Judge Caprio isn't finished. The sentence stands. Do you have anything to say? Christopher Wellington, to his credit, doesn't argue. No, Your Honor, I deserve this. Yes, Mr. Wellington, you do. Within 3 hours, video of the hearing goes viral, not the full proceeding. Someone recorded the phone call moment on their phone from the gallery. Richard Wellington's voice saying, "I will not use my position or influence to protect my son from accountability," plays on news channels across the country by dinner time. It's shared 4.7 million times in the first 24 hours. The political and professional fallout is immediate. Marcus Whitmore resigns from Whitmore, Hastings Reed 11 days later. The firm loses 17 major clients in 3 weeks. Companies that don't want to be associated with attempting to destroy a 71-year-old victim's credibility. By June 2023, Whitmore, Hastings Reed files for bankruptcy protection. 347 attorneys lose their jobs. The firm that tried to bury justice under paperwork is buried by one phone call. Richard Wellington keeps his word. He doesn't appeal. He doesn't use his influence. He visits his son in jail twice a week, every week, for 60 days. He tells journalists who ask that he's proud of his son for accepting responsibility, even if it took a judge forcing his hand. Christopher Wellington serves his 60 days. He loses 15 pounds. He reads 47 books. He writes in a journal every night, and when he's released, he doesn't go home to his penthouse apartment. He moves into a modest one-bedroom in Federal Hill and shows up at the Providence Public Library on his first Saturday out. The transformation doesn't happen overnight. For the first 3 months, Christopher is awkward with the children, still carrying traces of his old arrogance. But there's a moment, 6 months into his community service, where everything shifts. He's working with a 9-year-old girl named Sophia, who's struggling with fractions. She's frustrated, on the verge of tears, convinced she's stupid because numbers don't make sense. Christopher kneels beside her desk and says, "I used to think I was too smart to learn from my mistakes. That's the dumbest thing I ever believed. You're not stupid. You're learning. That's what brave people do." Sophia solves the problem, and Christopher realizes that he's become someone who helps instead of hurts. 15 months after the sentencing, on a Tuesday afternoon, Professor Chen arrives at the library. He's still in a wheelchair, but his face has color again. His daughter pushes him to the children's section where Christopher is teaching. "Professor," Christopher says, standing quickly, "I didn't know you'd be here." "My daughter told me what you're doing," Professor Chen says quietly. "Teaching children, every week, never missing a Saturday. It's the least I can do. It's nothing compared to what you lost." "It's not nothing." Professor Chen reaches into his bag and pulls out a framed photograph. It's Bailey, the golden retriever, sitting in a pile of autumn leaves, tongue out, happy. "I want you to have this. I want you to remember that every choice we make affects someone. Bailey was family. You took him from me. But you're also becoming someone who helps children learn. That matters." Christopher takes the photo with shaking hands. "I don't deserve this." "No," Professor Chen agrees. "But grace isn't about deserving, it's about growing. I see you growing." 2 years after the sentencing, Christopher Wellington completes his 800 community service hours. The library asks the library him to stay on as a volunteer. He does. He's there every Saturday still, teaching mathematics to immigrant children, carrying a photo of a golden retriever in his wallet as a reminder of the night he learned that no amount of money, no battalion of lawyers, and no powerful last name can protect you from the consequences of your choices. And in Providence, Rhode Island, Judge Frank Caprio continues to sit on the bench, removing his glasses when entitled, "People try to intimidate his courtroom," making phone calls when necessary, and proving that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be impressed by power. Don't forget to subscribe for more courtroom justice stories. Hit that like button if you believe accountability matters regardless of wealth. Drop a comment about whether you think Christopher's transformation was genuine or if 2 years of community service is enough for what he did. This courtroom taught us that when unlimited resources meet unlimited entitlement, sometimes all it takes is one judge who refuses to blink and one father brave enough to say no.